spin. It's about 5:30 a.m. I just figured I'd go for a ride. I mean, for my normal job, I'm usually up at this time, you know, heading to work or even at work sometimes. Sometimes I go in at like 5 a.m., you know, depending on what the day is looking like. So I'm normally up around this time. So since I'm a little bit closer to the city, it's just like I can just pop over there real quick. I'll hit up Times Square, you know, just kind of fuck around a little bit. Then I'll get some breakfast because I'm hungry. Alright, well look, if you can't tell, I took the muffler off. But, you know, people like the sound of this thing. People like the sound and the look of this bike. They like a loud, ratty, like just piece of shit just kind of flinging itself around. People like that. Is too loud. But the thing is, with the muffler, it's too quiet. At least that's what I tell myself. Is definitely it's capable of doing highway speeds, but you're topped out, you know, there's nothing left. I mean, with its current trim, without fairings, naked, my big ass on it, it's kind of hard to even top out top gear, you know. And also, like, this is like the only bike, well, not the only, I'm lying, because the Rebel was like that, but I thought that was pretty obvious. But this is one of those bikes where, you know, you pull up to the front of the line, you filter to the front of the intersection. And of course you gotta kind of cut off somebody in a car to get around them. This is one of those bikes where you're not sure if you could take the car next to you. You know what I'm saying? Take as in out accelerate them, because you gotta spin this bike up. You definitely gotta spin this bike up. Jump off at 42nd and cross over to the West Side Highway. That was fun, but now I'm like deaf. So the other day, this bike was running on less cylinders. Like it would be running on 2. Sometimes it sounded like it was running on 1, and everything was just out of whack. So I'm like, you know what can it possibly be? So I went through like the troubleshooting method. You know, I assumed that it was more than likely spark, because I mean, why wouldn't they be getting fuel in there, right? So like, gotta be like a spark plug, maybe like a coil lead is loose, or you know, something trivial like that. So I did the test where you take the coil from the coil lead from cylinder 4 and you put it on cylinder 1, you know, because they run the same timing. So you take that one, you put it on 1, and if it changes, then you know something's wrong with that coil lead or whatever. So I did that, it didn't change, but then I put coil lead 1 onto spark plug 4, and it worked. It was firing. That made me assume that it was a spark plug. So I replaced the spark plug, still wasn't running right. Now the fact that cylinder 4 was making cylinder 4 wire was making cylinder 1 not fire, but cylinder 1 wire was making cylinder 4 fire, made me assume that it was a spark plug. So you know, a spark plug is like what, $3? I just went and picked up a spark plug, picked up a whole set, might as well, you know. There's no reason to just get one when they're $3. So, but I changed out only that one, right? Because these are new plugs. I don't know how one will go bad, but you know, that's what the troubleshooting was telling me. So I put the new plug in there, and still wouldn't fire, still wouldn't do anything, still was running on less cylinders than it should be. So I was like, okay, it has to be something with the carburetor. Generally, you think that it would be something that was like out of adjustment, like something walked out, walked in, you know, something like whatever the case may be. So I opened up the carburetor for cylinder 1. This is, mind you, this is at a gas station on the side of the road. I just opened up the top of the first carburetor just to kind of see what's going on in there. Just kind of get an idea of what's going on. So I open it up, and the bolt that connects, like the assembly that rotates to open up all the slides for each carburetor, the bolt fell out. So when I would get on the throttle, the 2, 3, 4 would open up, 1 would stay closed. So 1 wasn't getting anything. Like, it fell all the way down. It wasn't even like partially open, it was just all the way down. I'm like, fuck, on the side of the road, I don't necessarily have this bolt. So I just literally just took a bolt out of one of the float bowls. I was just like, fuck it, just throw it in there. Float bowl 1 is missing a bowl. It's supposed to be 4 that's holding a bowl into the carburetor. I just took one out, put it in, closed it back up. I was like, all right, ready to go. So I ride a couple more blocks, and next thing you know, the shit starts revving to 6,000 RPM and staying at 6,000 RPM without me even touching the damn thing. I'm like, what the hell? Like, how you go from not running on all cylinders to running on everything at high RPM? Like, how does that happen? So I pull over in a TD Bank parking lot, just kind of inspect it, because I fixed that problem. Why can't I fix any other problems? So I inspect the bike in the parking lot, just start kind of looking around, and I'm like, I just can't fucking, like, this idle screw is all the way out. Like, it's not even touching the goddamn carburetor to keep, to adjust the idle. Like, it's all the way out. And I turn the bike on and it's still revving to 6,000. I'm just like, what the hell is going on with this bike? So, with an old bike, anybody with an old carbureted bike knows that sometimes the float valve will stick open, fuel will keep rushing in, and it'll just like drain out the bottom. And you just kind of whack the bowls a little bit, try to get it to unstick. Normally, as you can see, like when I start this bike in videos, I usually use the kickstart. I only usually use the electric starter. And also just like, it's kind of a backup, if I can't kickstart it. I don't want to blow out something related to the starter, like the solenoid or the starter, because I didn't replace any of those things. Those are all the original parts that I got the bike with. And who knows how much life these things got left on them. So I don't want to overuse it, and then they break and I need them. Now, the float bowls on a normal, not ratty bike, they usually have a hose going from the overflow tube down to like the ground. Like, they'll route around the engine and lead them straight to the ground. On this, they're gone. So like when the fuel dumps out, it just dumps on top of the engine. Now, as I was just inspecting the bike, trying to figure everything out, I used the electric start. The bike went up in fucking flames. I was I was like, oh shit. Everywhere that the gas was, which is like on top of the engine and on the ground, right? So the flames go up, there's a puddle of gas underneath the bike. There's also gas dripping. So like the gas on top of the engine ignites, the gas dripping ignites, and the gas on the ground ignites. So I have a bike with the engine on fire, with the ground on fire, and I have no extinguisher. Like, I'm just like, well, this is the end of this bike. So it was a lot of like shit that went through my head when that was happening. Like, part of me was like, all right, this bike is done. Part of me was like, okay, I should probably take my phone out and at least film this shit. And the other part of me was like, all right, I need to call 911. But I think that last thought of me calling 911 made me realize, like, the fire department is not going to get here to save this bike. They're just going to get here to put out the fire. The bike is going to be fucking destroyed long before they get here. Like, you're not getting this bike back if you call 911. And if you call 911, you're going to make a huge scene for something that you can just fix yourself. So I just grabbed my hat and just started beating the shit out of the fires. Put out the fire on the bike, rolled it forward, stomped out the fire on the ground, turned around, realized that the ignition wires for the electronic ignition was still on fire. So I just had to grab the these wires down here, and I like grabbed them and I just went like that, like swiped off all the insulation. So now I got bare ignition wire. I mean, the fire was out at this point, but I got bare ignition wire, shorting out all over the place. I don't know if this thing's gonna start now because you have no ignition. I mean, the wires are burned. So luckily, where I stopped was right next to an AutoZone. So I ran into AutoZone and I bought some electrical tape and some wire strippers. So there was sections of the wire that was like completely, like, there was no saving it. So I had to shorten. I mean, I should have shortened it to begin with, but this definitely forced my hand with that, because I kind of had the wires long because I didn't know how I was going to route it. I just wanted to connect everything up, get the bike running, and then worry about making everything pretty later. So I just get the tape, I patch up the wires. As you can see, it's still electrical taped, and honestly it looks better because it's kind of stealthy now. The other time it was like red wires and like white wires. So yeah, at that point I just rode home with the bike revving to 6,000 RPM. Put it in high gear, you know, just kind of calm it down. Rode it to my parents' house, not my apartment. I rode it to my parents' house, and I was like, I'll just take a look at the carburetor. Either tomorrow, I stayed the night, either, you know, in the morning or, you know, whenever. But the next day it rained pretty hard, so like I was like, I'm not taking this bike anyway, even if I fix it, and I'm not trying to wrench in the rain. So I ended up just leaving it at my parents' house for like a week. Then I came back the following week, finally opened up the carburetor, and what happened was the bolt that fell out, like, you know, that made the problem in the first place, that made it stay closed. Once I opened it, like, you know, reconnected everything and made cylinder 1 open again, it kind of worked the bolt and the washer around to where it was making it stick. So you could open it, but it wouldn't close all the way. You know what I'm saying? So like the point where it would close all the way was being blocked by one of the pieces of hardware. So I just fished that out and slapped it back together, and of course that fixed the problem. As you can see, 4 cylinders, idles totally fine. So that was a bit of a doozy. Right now we're heading downtown. Let's take a detour. Maybe I'll find a diner somewhere. Photo opportunity. As soon as I stop to take this picture, I bet you a car is going to pass through. Be discreet, try not to wake everybody up. You know, this thing sounds like a triple when you short shift it like that. Now I'm kind of disoriented though. River, that means west. The west side highway should be that way. go around the Battery and then jump on the Brooklyn Bridge. There's those bias-ply tires. Alright, back to Brooklyn. Nice little romp to clear the head.